Now, in this week's Let's Talk Some Star Wars, I'll quickly be taking a look at the results of the poll that asked the question, who or what do you think is most to blame for the current state of the fractured or so-called toxic Star Wars fandom? And then I'm pretty much just going to read comments and maybe very briefly throw my 2 cents in at a couple points. And by that I just mean a few mostly neutral words, because I'm mainly just focused on people having their say here, no matter what they have to say. Anyway, let's quickly look at the results of the poll, and we'll see that just shy of half of the 32,000 people who voted picked an SJW agenda being inserted into Star Wars as what's most to blame for the current state of things. With 26% of people then saying it was just Disney and or Lucasfilm missing the mark with the sequels, and another 13% saying it was the media and employees of Lucasfilm attacking the fans over The Last Jedi Backlash, with then 9% saying it's the fans upset about their expectations not being met, and finally 4% saying it's something else entirely. Okay, so clearly a lot of people think an SJW agenda is at the root of all the problems here. Though yeah, I will make the usual disclaimer and point out that those who watch my videos and take part in these polls may be biased on some level, especially since I am very openly critical of The Last Jedi. It's hard to know exactly what the results would look like with a broader sample size. Nevertheless, that doesn't take away from the fact that at least some 15,000 people feel an SJW agenda is causing a problem in Star Wars. And before I get to the comments, I just want to make it clear that just because I read something doesn't necessarily mean I agree with it. I'm trying to get some diverse opinions here. And of the 2,300 comments or so that this poll got, and thank you to everyone who did leave a comment, and I'm sorry I'm not going to get to all of them, well, I separated out roughly 100 of them that either got highly rated or that I personally thought said something and said it well. And what I'm going to do now is more or less randomly pick from that pool of 100 or so, and then read the comment and give perhaps a quick and neutral remark about something they have said. Because even though I obviously have my own beliefs and opinions on this matter, I really am here to try to play mediator more or less. And if you're wondering why I'm even doing this, well, in order to solve a problem, you must first understand it. Now, I'm not saying I believe this will lead to peace in the Star Wars fandom, but if we can at least understand what some people are upset about, well, that'll at least be a start. Anyway, let's get going here, and the only comment I will specifically read is the top-rated comment, which came to us from Total War Destroyer, who said, "It's all of those. They don't care what the fans think, so they add an agenda, make a completely different story than what we want, etc." And I think this got top comment because that is exactly how a lot of people feel. Okay, let's now pick our first random comment, and this one comes to us from Devil Horse Advocate, who said, "I personally very much enjoyed the movies they were producing, and it was only the hostility of the company's employees towards the criticism that led me to also be critical of them." Next up, a comment from Joe Hawkins, who said, "It's the fans' expectations and the SJW agenda. Just give us good Star Wars. That's all we've ever asked for. Stop pandering to political correctness. Stop trying to market it for new female fans only. Market it for the already established fans and the new ones will come." And this isn't a crazy concept at all. Make Star Wars movies for Star Wars fans, and what people have always loved about it will attract new fans to the franchise. Next up, we got a comment from Dan Talks, who said, "Definitely the fans. It's hilarious how we all repeat the same cycle. Offensive things gave rise to the SJW culture. SJW culture went to extreme, which gave rise to anti-SJW sentiments. Now those anti-SJWs have become overly sensitive to anything that remotely appeals politically correct, and we are all basically back at the start. There is some forced politically correct stuff in the new Star Wars media, but to say that is the main cause of the drama is ridiculous, and it's quite telling about what one of the main problems actually is." And yeah, I do think this is a pretty vicious cycle. The more SJW we're given, the more we see it even in places that it's not there. The louder we complain about it, the more they want to push it on us. This is something I've actually talked about before. Moving on then, I voted for them inserting an SJW agenda into Star Wars. I think that this action has caused most of the other problems. An SJW agenda allowed for employees to backlash on fans because they are bigots, sexists, racists, etc., who only hate for that reason. It also caused fans to not get what they want because they are forcing a story nobody asked for because of their need for activism. These combined issues spawning from an SJW agenda caused Disney to miss the mark with the sequel trilogy. Next up, we have a comment from Ricardo A. Guitar, who said, "I picked completely missing the mark. I actually think I could live with the disagreeable politics if the rest of it had been competent and not ruin the old characters." Next up, we have a comment from Ash Greene who said, "This poll proves that the fandom menace are a bunch of bigoted man babies. So sad. I honestly supported them because the movies genuinely suck balls." Now, I'm rather curious how you came to that conclusion, but all this poll really proves, to be honest with you, is how a certain section of the fanbase feels and what they think is the root of the problem in said fanbase. Okay, let's move on to a comment from James Creighton who said, "It isn't just that they fed us garbage with The Last Jedi, it's that they called us evil for not liking it." Alright, let's move on to a comment from Michael Viater who said, "I love the new sequels personally, but I understand where a lot of the hate, strong emotions come from, because fans felt like their expectations were not being met. I personally haven't dove into the expanded universe like most diehard fans until recently, so I am not so attached to preconceived Star Wars ideas. Therefore, like I have said, I love the new movies just like I love the prequels. It's all Star Wars to me." Next up, a comment from ObeseMongeese. That's an interesting name. Anyway, they said, "For me, it's mostly because they missed the mark with the sequels. The Star Wars universe is so large and filled with opportunities for new concepts, characters, and stories. The fact that they went with the exact same tropes as the original trilogy made the whole plot somewhat nonsensical and disconnected from the rest. Hopefully 9 will change my mind, but I have no idea how." And I'm right there with you. I do hope Episode 9 is an excellent movie and begins to, shall we say, heal some of the fractures in the fanbase. Next up, we have a comment from Kellis98 who said, "There is absolutely no SJW feminist agenda at all. People are upset and looking for things that aren't there. You can't claim there is just because women have larger roles. Plus, the first 6 movies were influenced in part by politics and real-world issues, so why aren't they hated on? And the arguments that somehow Rey is a Mary Sue or isn't enough of a traditional woman, in some people's eyes, is stupid and couldn't be further from the truth. People are also upset that things are different, like the choices made in The Last Jedi, or even that things are too similar, like The Force Awakens. People who claim to hate Lucas now all of a sudden love him. I wonder why that is. Also, the people that respond to your polls are only a small section, and also they are very like-minded of the community and not representative of the whole fan base. And yes, I will again acknowledge that this is a mostly biased and like-minded sample size, but that in no way means it's not relevant to the larger discussion. Nobody gets to speak for the whole fandom, and I only speak, to a very small degree, for those people who vote in these polls. If a very pro-Disney Star Wars channel here on YouTube conducted a very similar poll to me and got the exact opposite results, that would only confirm that a huge split in the fanbase exists. The purpose of this poll in particular was to mainly get some comments from people to begin to figure out why this section of the fanbase is so disgruntled. And even if you are on the other side, if you will, it's hard to deny that there is a split in the fanbase, which means you can still partake in this poll if you'd like to. Okay, let's now move on to a comment from Dangerous Gaming who said, "Disney and Lucasfilm forced their SJW agenda into the movies and onto us, and then attacked the fans who called them out on it." Let's then move on to this comment from Gregory B who said, "It's number 3, the agenda, by default. The other problems wouldn't exist without the presence of the postmodern crap in this trilogy." And I do agree that the problems are pretty much a domino effect. Moving on then to a comment from Casuallya, a YouTube channel. "The people I blame the most are the quote-unquote fans who hated the prequels so much. You are the most destructive people. You are the reason George Lucas sold the rights. If you look at the prequels, story-wise, as the incredible films they are, we wouldn't have gotten these dumpster fires from Disney because George would have been in charge. The original trilogy has just as many flaws as the prequels. There really is no one to blame but the prequel haters." Well, alright, let's move on to another comment then, this time from Droid Walks Into a Bar who said, "It's a mix of all of those, but I think when it really comes down to it, Disney is at fault here. I personally don't mind at all having a diverse cast and a female lead. I think it's great. What I do mind is the fact that people praise these films for having diverse characters, when in reality most of them are written terribly. I do think that lots of the fans have overreacted to these films, but it is justified. Disney did nothing new or adventurous with Star Wars. They took the sequel era in a predictable direction and basically rehashed the same Empire vs. Rebellion story that we already knew. I think another problem doesn't even have to do with the films at all. I think it's the attitude that Disney employees have to their fans. Calling us man babies and saying our Snoke theory sucks is not a good way to treat the people who pay to see your films. I completely understand why that makes so many fans angry at Disney, because they're basically saying that if you don't like what we make, then you're a terrible, racist, sexist person. Obviously, this is exaggerated, but the point stands. Disney is at fault here. Next up, there's this comment from Treeson, who simply said, "There's enough content to hate in The Last Jedi without having to resort to stupid SJW arguments." Next up, we have a comment from Blacketeers TV, who said, "LOL at actually expecting the fandom to take responsibility for their own toxicity. It is never justifiable to be immature and toxic. This poll just provides excuses for childlike behavior from man-children." So if it's never justifiable to be immature, is it then not immature to call people man-children because they disagree with you and are, in many cases here, trying to have civil discourse? And so to be not so neutral for a moment, and I'm sorry that I'm using you as an example, but saying things like this are a part of the problem as well. Alright, let's now move on to a comment from SuperReagan, who said, "There is very little SJW agenda. It's mostly quote mines taken from things said by the production team many years ago and not in any way related to Star Wars. I'm not thrilled about what we got, but those who believe that's what's ruined the movie should probably reconsider what they believe off the internet." And after that comment, I think it's the perfect time to bring up one that I actually did kind of hand select, and it comes to us from Bernardo Barros, who simply said, "Internet." Because you know what? You might just be right. Alright then, let's get to a comment from Tim Murphy, who said, "The SJW agenda is a manufactured outrage. Star Wars has always carried a do good, be good message. I guarantee if Return of the Jedi were released today, people would call it SJW propaganda. In that matter, it isn't Star Wars that has changed, it's that our country's morality has changed." And honestly here, I'm not sure that the morality of the country has changed all that much, and I know some of you out there will vehemently disagree with that. Instead, I think visibility has changed, which goes back to that internet comment from a moment ago, because we hear and see more now than we ever have before in human history. Stories that in years gone by would have never even made the local news now get captured in a video and hit the internet, and they go around the world, and people get outraged about something that once upon a time they would have never even heard about. Take The Phantom Menace, for example, which came out before social media became a thing. I've heard from a lot of people who didn't realize just how much that movie was disliked until many years later, until social media came about. And so if social media wasn't a thing now, would we really have any clue just how divided the fan base was over these new movies? And I know I'm getting way off topic here, but as I've said before, the best thing about the internet is everybody gets to express their opinion, and the worst thing about the internet is everybody gets to express their opinion. Anyway, sorry for that little tangent. Let's get back to another comment or two before we wrap this up, starting with Space Patrol Blue, who said, "I agree with the SJW agenda stuff, but there is a very loud minority of toxic fans who have bitterly attacked the actors and actresses as if it's their fault. People saying horrible things based on Daisy Ridley's sex, along with Kelly Marie Tran and John Boyega's race. Even if you want to take it to the extreme and bitterly complain that the cast isn't white enough for your tastes, the actors aren't to blame for casting decisions and what their characters say and do on screen." And it's kind of sad that you even have to make this comment, because it should be obvious that an actor does not control what their character does. If that were the case, well, Mark Hamill may have changed a few things about Luke Skywalker. Okay, let's get to one last comment here. This one from William on Branagh, who said, "It is not the SJW agenda per se. Is it there? Yes. Is it a symptom of the problem? Yes. The real problem, however, is passionless creators. They are not passionate about Star Wars. They don't create from a place of love, and it shows in their movies. Rather than including positive messages in the movie, they are using the movie as a vehicle for those messages. It was never about making a Star Wars movie with messages. It was about sending a message and slapping a Star Wars logo on it." Okay, well, hopefully I've presented a few different opinions here, and that I've been relatively neutral with my own comments in response to them. What I personally took away from all of this, and keep in mind, I read close to pretty much every single comment left on this poll, which was about 2,300. Anyway, the problem in the eyes of many fans, and yes, once again, this is a somewhat biased sample size, but that doesn't mean their voices shouldn't be heard or count or matter, is that Lucasfilm and Disney initially approached the sequel trilogy, and Star Wars in general, with the idea of putting more female characters into the franchise. Which is perfectly fine, and despite what some want to claim, you'd be hard-pressed to find many fans at all who say that Star Wars sucks now because it simply just has more female characters. Instead, if you listen carefully, you'll hear people complaining about the quality of those characters. And sure, you might disagree with that, you might think Rey is amazing, but if others don't and criticize her, it's not right to default to the worst possible assumption, that she's only being disliked or criticized for being a female character. Anyway, this desire by Lucasfilm and or Disney to showcase these new strong female characters seems to have taken, in the eyes of many fans, priority over the story and spotlighting or doing justice to the legacy characters. For example, many fans feel Luke's character in The Last Jedi was sacrificed or pushed down to promote and lift up Rey, which, go figure, caused some fans to be upset at the movie, especially because, again, they just don't like Rey in the first place. And yes, some of these angered fans, a very small percentage of them, took it way too far and attacked the actors or made otherwise immature and unnecessary remarks towards fellow fans who do like these movies, which somehow then got everyone who disliked the movie lumped into one single category and condemned. And to be clear here, when I say the other side, I don't mean every single fan who liked The Last Jedi. In fact, just like those of us who don't like the movie, most of you who do are also good, rational people. The problem here has been mostly caused by the two extreme minorities on both sides who don't get to speak for everyone else who is, quote-unquote, also on their side. For example, a small group of people post some hateful comments towards Kelly Marie Tran, and the media, only interested in getting clicks on their articles and not uncovering or reporting the actual truth, blow it out of proportion and make it sound like there is this mass organized mob of Last Jedi haters attacking her, and they further imply this is how the majority of fans who don't like the movie feel. But here's an interesting fact. I don't recall seeing one single comment in all the responses to this poll that said something to the effect that the inclusion of female characters is ruining Star Wars. Only that the strong desire to put them in there without making sure they're creating actual good characters is causing a problem. Which means, as Star Wars fans, it's really time to stop letting false information and ridiculous beliefs divide us. It's time to stop this crazy notion that people who disagree with us are automatically our enemies, especially when we have such a solid and common ground between us, which is, of course, that we all love Star Wars. Well, that's all I've got for this time. And now that we've discussed what's causing the problem, I'm oh so curious to hear what you all have to say about this and to know how you think this fan base can be healed, or if it even can at this point. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thank you for watching.